Good morning, my readers. It's been quite a bit of time since I last uploaded a video. I probably don't make as much use of my YouTube channel as should, and I aim to change that. Um, Over having written over 3,000 articles on that I share for free on my legal blog. Um, I don't produce as often that many articles anymore. Not because there's no other topic to discuss, but actually because I pretty much written what I feel are the most relevant topics, and I refresh them every time as I see convenient. And But I never discuss the probably the most important topic of them all is what I call the ABCs of buying property along the peninsula of Baja California and Mexico. Um, you know that the reason that we have a fideicomiso is because of a constitutional obligation contained in Article 27 of the Mexican Constitution that, among other things, it specifies that um, foreigners under no circumstances shall be able to directly buy uh, and own land and water in the restricted zones of Mexico. That is a condition that has existed since the Constitution of 1917, where the Constitution prohibited that foreigners, as I said before, acquired the direct domain or ownership of property 50 kilometers from the border and 100 kilometers from the coast. Now, the peninsula of Baja California is a thin stretch of land that extends for over 700 miles from the border um, of San Diego, Tecate, and Mexicali, San Diego, Tijuana, Tecate, and Mexicali in Calexico, and all the way down to Tepoca, Baja. And people would figure, well, if it is 50 kilometers from the border and 100 kilometers from the coast, there must be some spot where I don't have to have a fideicomiso. Actually, no. The Baja California Peninsula has been restricted in it as a whole. Um, on the mainland, if you're buying property away from 50 kilometers from the border and um, inland beyond 100 kilometers, you can directly own property, meeting some conditions. But why do we actually have a fideicomiso? Um, the reason is plain and simple. We have we share one of the longest borders in the world with the United States of America. Our relationship with the United States has not always been uh, uh, a good one at all. Not always. Big Brother always meant to expand. Ever since they set ground on Plymouth Rock and they decided to overstay, and the natives noticed that these folks uh, didn't mean to go back wherever they came back, so they stayed, and then they started spreading all over the country. With time, they established along the east of the United States, and with time, they were looking for more and more and more, and they started spreading through the Carolinas and the Virginias and um, Vermont, and you know the story. With time, there was so much more land to the west, so the cry for head west, young man, came true, and head west they did until they ran out of space and they faced the Pacific Ocean. But Manifest Destiny and the James Polk doctrine made Mexico a target. I'm sorry if people disagree. I'm not addressing history here for more than one reason. And obviously, Mexico eventually was invaded by the armies of the United States through borders and coasts. And After the 1846-1848 war, Mexico was forced to settle under unfair terms and concede more than half its territory, which is now um, part of the United States of America. That happened in 1846, 1848. But in 1917, then Mexico decided to um, do something about it. They hadn't changed the law, so they changed the law to so that Article 27 includes that prohibition that foreigners under no circumstances shall be able to directly own water and land in a strip of 50 kilometers from the border, 100 from the coast. Uh, so that has been the rule ever since 1917. But in 1973, Mexico's then president decided to do something about it and eventually updated the foreign investment law, which included an option for foreign owners to acquire the rights of property and along the borders and coast of Mexico, which is called the fideicomiso. It's a contract with a bank for a bank to act as a tutor of a foreign individual or a corporation who wishes to buy the land along the restricted zones of Mexico, border and coast. That way, the bank directly holds the deed of the property on behalf of the investor, American company or American individuals or foreign individuals, generally not America, but foreign individuals or corporations. Um, and they hold that deed initially for 30 years. Before those 30 years expired, which was supposed to be around 2003, Mexico's government decided to upgrade that and increase the number of years that a person could own the property under the fideicomiso, and it became 50 years. So ever since mid 90s, the fideicomiso is now good for 50 years to use and enjoy property along over 10 the restricted zones of Mexico. Now, that is not a lease; it is a purchase agreement signed by the bank and the buyer and the seller, and it's uh, regulated by a permit issued by the federal government of Mexico um, for 50 years, renewable. Make sure to understand this. This is renewable. So it cannot be a lease because when have you heard that in a lease you're able to sell the property? Of course not. You might be able to sublease, but most of the time a landlord doesn't allow that. Therefore, yes, I renewed fideicomisos from folks that had the 30-year trust, which are now 50-year trusts, and they're into the second term. There's no limited term. This is uh, uh, for forever, for good, but you have to renew every 50 years. Um, so the bank, as I said, holds the deed of the fideicomiso on behalf of the foreign buyer because the Constitution says that the foreign buyer cannot directly own. Therefore, the bank does it on their behalf, then they indirectly own on behalf of the buyer. Now, the fideicomiso recently, every year, when you the government of Mexico, federal government of Mexico, reviews and increases most of their public services and licensing for a number of service and topics and among the fideicomiso. And by the month of December, they review that, and by the first 2 weeks of January, they notify people that those fees have increased. So it has the fideicomiso, the permit for 50 years, which is still around $1,000. So it's not going to break the bank. But again, it's a one-time fee for 50 years. And your children will be able to renew that. They don't have to buy it again. They just have to renew the contract with a bank, and the federal government will issue a permit at whatever the cost is at the time. But taxes and anything else, they are not to be paid, only an appraisal, noting certificate, and a survey of the property. So, in a nutshell, that is why we have a fideicomiso, because of the unsteady relationship with the United States of America and Mexico, and us losing half our territory during the war, and that is way over 100 years, but it still remains as a rule in Mexico. And what is that? What is it going to take for that to change? I really don't know. Um, I don't expect it to occur during this times where Mexico has leftist government, um, and so I just expect things to remain steady as they have for since 1973. Um, One thing that you should understand is that a lot of people make a mistake, a judgment mistake, induced sometimes by others who are also missing the right information. Uh, a lot of people enter simulations or even create corporations, which is not legal, it's proper, to avoid the fideicomiso because they don't want to pay the $2,000 that is going to cost to have the bank file for the permit to create a fideicomiso for 50 years, um, and pay the fee to the bank, which is around $500 to accept the duty of being the trustee of the trust owners, and the $500 fee for the annual handling fee that is paid in advance. Uh, so if I, as a Mexican, am buying property right next to you, and I'm buying for the same price as you are, and let's call it $100,000. Each of us is paying that, so we have to formalize. We have to go to a notary. But you being restricted by the Constitution of Mexico because of being the property being restricted to zones of Mexico, you have to go through a bank to hire the bank to request the permit from the federal government of Mexico for 50 years for the fideicomiso. I don't have to do that, but um, so what is the cost difference? You're paying $2,000 more than I. That's it. We're paying the same fees, the same notary fees. Um, we're getting noting certificates. We have to process um, appraisals and surveys. Okay, same as an American, same as a Canadian, same as a Mexican. Even if it is a foreign corporation doing that in Mexico, my corporation in Mexico has to do the same. So make no mistake, it's only a $2,000 difference. Yes, you could argue that every year you had to pay $500 plus value-added tax to the bank to hold the deed in your behalf. That is true, but one thing that you have to understand that there's state planning benefits in a fideicomiso that a Mexican doesn't have. And listen to this. People have questioned me when I have said this, that under the fideicomiso, you have more protection than a Mexican does without a fideicomiso. Well, just make sure to understand the following: that a fideicomiso is a contract that holds the deed of the property on behalf of the trust owners. Okay, so if the trust owners pass away, the fideicomiso doesn't conclude. It doesn't end. It continues as a corporation would. See, so trust owners in a fideicomiso must name, particularly husband and wife. They name each other their own reciprocate beneficiaries at the passing of the other. So if there's a husband and wife and they own this property under the trust, okay, and so they each hold 50% or half of the property, okay, land and the house and improvements or anything else. So the passing of one, it passes to the other, but the surviving spouse has to notify the bank, and they can get certificates, those of which I already named, and upgrade the ownership of the fideicomiso to the widower who has survived. At the passing of the last of the two, the widower, this passes to the designated alternate beneficiaries, which are normally the children, which eventually would have to also notify the bank um, of the passing of the surviving trust owner. So they acknowledge the rights to the alternate beneficiaries to become the new trust owners of the fideicomiso, which themselves may name their own appointed alternate beneficiaries. Because of that condition, because of that clause, anyone in the fideicomiso is able to skip probate. Whereas in Mexico, um, as a homeowner, I must give a will and naming my daughter upon my passing, she will have to start probate in Mexico, which takes over 12 months in court. It takes thousands of dollars on legal fees. Again, it's almost 18 months on the average. And then still pay transfer costs to notaries, the government, etc., which add another $6,000. So she's going to be burdened by at least $18,000. So, would you, if you were to create a foreign-owned corporation to hold to own property to skip the fideicomiso, eventually the owners of the corporation have to have wills of of their own, and when they pass away, the rights of the corporation plus the assets will be distributed based on the ownership of the partners or shareholders in the corporation. So they will not be able to skip probate. They still have to go to probate, even under a corporation. Whereas in the fideicomiso, you skip probate. You only notify the bank of the passing of the owners. Okay, um, and so on and on and on. So I, as a Mexican, I can actually have a fideicomiso of my own for estate planning purposes to avoid my children from having to pay probate as well as the other costs. So make sure to understand that when you try to create a corporation for the only reason of skipping the fideicomiso, you're making a terrible mistake unless you really mean to have a business in Mexico and acquire assets, one of which would be your residence. So there's those two aspects that are so important. So yes, you also have more protection than a Mexican does. Now, I welcome your comments. Please share this video if you feel that it is that the contents are worth sharing. I'm, as an attorney at law that graduated back in 1982, I've been in steady practice of my profession ever since. I have uh, been listed by the U.S. Embassy as an attorney in their attorney list for the Consulate District of Baja California North and South. And I pride myself for it because I always put my client's interests before my own. Therefore, um, I just want you to know that my fields of expertise are 99% of my clients are people wanting to buy property in Mexico or who are homeowners, either individuals or corporations from the world over. I've been doing this, as I said since 1982. Okay, so I've been around the block many times, and my competition usually is half my age. So they may be wise beyond their years, but there's no match for experience and a clean record. Again, if you wish to buy property or you wish to modify your fideicomiso or you have a corporation and you're thinking and wish to that you hadn't made the decision to create a corporation, um, just make sure that among other things in the corporation you did lose the right to skip probate. If you eventually transfer the property from the corporation to a new fideicomiso, as you should have done in the beginning, make sure to understand that you will also get another great benefit, that in a corporation, when you sell the assets of the corporation, you will be taxed 85% of the profit. Under the fideicomiso, the homeowners, as long as they have legal status in Mexico, as long as they are the trust owner of the property, as long as they have tax IDs, which we call RFC in Mexico, and as long as they have legal status, uh, either permanent or temporary resident visas, and they have utility bills with their names on the receipt, you may qualify for a tax exemption on the profit on the sale of your home. So I will eventually create a new video discussing the capital gains tax exemption Let me know your comments. Again, share this information, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you so much, and I look forward to being back, and hopefully under better weather because I'm locked in. It's not raining, but it's crispy outside, and I'm not spoiled by the weather in Tijuana. This is normal, but it's overly cold, and not we're not used to that. So I'm wearing this, and I'd rather be outside where it should be nice and shiny. It is somewhat overcast today, so it's not always going to look this gloomy. Okay, thank you again. Bye bye.